Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Divis Laboratories.
Yeah,
This is a company that you might not have heard of, but they play a huge role behind the scenes
absolutely.
in the global pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, they're kind of like the silent force behind a lot of the medications that we see and use every day.
Okay, so let's, I guess, start with the basics
Hmm.
for people who are unfamiliar with the company.
Sure.
What exactly does Divis Laboratories do?
Well, they specialize in producing what are called active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs.
APIs.
And you can think of these as the raw materials, the essential building blocks that go into making those medications.
Okay.
So they're not actually developing the final drug product themselves, but they're supplying those critical ingredients to other pharmaceutical companies all around the world.
Well, like the flour in a cake, or
Yeah, exactly. Like
uh,
you can't have a cake without flour.
you can't have medicine
You
without
can't have medicine without these APIs.
API.
They're the active component that makes the medicine actually do what it's supposed to do.
So they're really at the heart of the whole process.
Yeah, they're really foundational to the entire pharmaceutical supply chain.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be focusing on Divi's latest financial report, which just came out.
Yep. February 3rd, 2025.
Okay, so this is really fresh off the press stuff.
Exactly. We've got their unaudited financials for the third quarter of fiscal year 2025. That's covering October to December of 2024.
Okay, so this is giving us a glimpse into the most recent performance.
Yeah, exactly how they've been doing over the past 3 months.
Now, I'm curious about the format of this report. Is it all just numbers, or is there like narrative and commentary as well?
Well, it's primarily financial data, but it also includes some really interesting management commentary and some insights into their strategic decisions.
Okay, so it's not just a dry spreadsheet.
No, definitely not.
There's some juicy stuff in there for us to analyze.
There's a lot of good stuff to dig into.
Okay, so let's dive into those numbers then. How did Divi's perform financially in this most recent quarter?
Well, let's start with their consolidated performance, which includes all of their subsidiaries and, globally.
Okay, so this is the big picture view.
Yeah, exactly, the bird's eye view. And they pulled in a total income of 2,401 crores.
Crores, and I gotta admit, I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah, so crores is a term used in India, which is equivalent to 10 million.
10 million.
So we're talking about a significant amount of money here.
Okay, so can you put that into US dollars for us just to give a sense of scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's about 300 million US dollars just for those 3 months.
Wow, $300 million in one quarter.
They're doing pretty well.
That's incredible.
It's pretty impressive.
How does that compare to their performance last year during the same period?
It's a significant jump from the 1,950 crores or roughly 245 million US dollars that they brought in during the same quarter last year.
So that's a pretty healthy increase.
Yeah, substantial growth year over year.
Now, I know revenue is important, but ultimately, it's the profit that really matters.
You're absolutely right.
So what do their profit figures look like for this quarter?
Well, their profit before tax was 726 crores.
Okay, and just for our listeners who are not familiar with Indian currency, that's
Well,
roughly
that translates to a little over 90 million US dollars.
so that's a pretty impressive profit margin.
It is very healthy profit margin, yeah.
It's clear that Divi's is doing something right.
Yeah, they seem to have a winning formula.
So let's try to understand what's driving their success.
Sure.
I imagine their global reach plays a big role.
Absolutely. They're supplying APIs to a lot of different countries around the world, not just India.
So they're tapping into a much larger market than if they were just focused domestically.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a diverse customer base, which helps to mitigate risks. And, if one market slows down, they've got other markets to rely on.
That makes sense. So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Diversification is key.
But I imagine operating globally also comes with its own set of challenges.
Oh, definitely.
I'm thinking specifically about currency exchange rates.
Yeah, that's a big one.
How does that factor into their financial performance?
Well, it can have a significant impact because their revenue and expenses are in different currencies.
Right? They might be earning in euros or dollars.
Exactly. And then they have to convert those earnings back into rupees for reporting purposes.
And those exchange rates can fluctuate quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely. They can swing wildly sometimes.
So how has Divi's been navigating those currency fluctuations in this latest quarter?
Well, their report actually breaks down the impact of Forex or foreign exchange.
Okay, and what does that tell us?
In Q3, they had a Forex gain of 10 crores.
So they actually benefited from the changes in currency exchange rates.
Yeah, in this particular quarter, it worked in their favor.
And just to give a sense of scale, that's about
About 1.25 million US dollars.
Okay, so not a huge amount, but still a positive impact.
Yeah, every little bit helps.
Now, how does that compare to the same period last year?
Well, last year they had a larger forex gain of 18 crores or $2.25 million.
So it seems like the impact of currency fluctuations was a bit less pronounced this time around.
Yeah, it was a bit more muted in this quarter.
Okay, so they're clearly aware of these currency risks and they're factoring them into their financial planning.
Oh, absolutely. It's something they have to keep a close eye on because it can affect their profitability quite significantly.
Now, so far we've been focusing on the quarterly results, but what about the bigger picture?
Sure.
What do their financials look like for the entire 9 months leading up to December 31st, 2024?
Yeah, so if we zoom out and looked at the first 9 months of their fiscal year, their consolidated total income reached 7,041 crores.
Okay, now that's a pretty big number. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, that's over 800 million US dollars.
Wow, 800 million. That's
That's a lot of revenue.
phenomenal.
Yeah, they're definitely a major player in the pharmaceutical industry.
And how does that compare to the same 9-month period in the previous year?
Well, in 2023, they earned 5,804 crores, or about 725 million US dollars during the same time frame.
So once again, we're seeing a pretty significant increase.
Yep, consistent upward trend.
And what about their profit before tax for those 9 months?
That also saw a notable jump, reaching 2,052 crores, or about 256 million US dollars.
So they're not just growing their revenue, they're also becoming more profitable.
Exactly. They're managing their expenses well and efficiently converting their revenue into profit.
It sounds like they have a very solid management team in place.
Yeah, they seem to know what they're doing.
Now, speaking of management, there was an interesting announcement in their report about their CEO.
Yes, the board has decided to reappoint Dr. Kiran S. Divi as their whole-time director and chief executive officer for another 5 years.
Okay, so he's going to continue leading the company.
Yes, his current term was set to expire, so this reappointment ensures continuity in leadership.
I'm curious, what exactly does a whole-time director do? It sounds very official.
Yeah, it's a term that's commonly used in India's corporate structure, and it essentially means that Dr. Divi is fully dedicated to the company and is involved in the day-to-day operations.
So he's not just a figurehead, he's really hands-on.
Exactly. He's deeply involved in the company's strategic decision-making.
And I understand he's been with Divi's for quite some time.
Yeah, he's been with the company for over 25 years.
Wow,
That's a long time.
that's a testament to his dedication and expertise.
Absolutely. He knows the company inside and out.
And he's been serving as the CEO
Since January 2020.
Okay, so he's been at the helm for a few years now
Right.
and has seen the company through some pretty challenging times, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. The past few years have been turbulent for many businesses globally.
But it seems like Divi's has weathered those storms pretty well under his leadership.
Yeah, they've not only survived, they've thrived.
Now, the report also mentions some of Dr. Divi's key responsibilities. Can you tell us a bit more about what he oversees?
Sure, so he's responsible for a wide range of areas, including manufacturing operations, business strategy development.
So he's got his fingers in a lot of pies.
Yeah, he's got a lot on his plate.
And what else does he handle?
He also looks after marketing, quality assurance, regulatory affairs, even human resources.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive role.
Yeah, it's a very demanding job.
But it sounds like he's the kind of leader who can handle that kind of pressure.
Yeah, he seems to have the experience and the skills to navigate the complexities of the pharmaceutical industry.
Now, there's an interesting detail in the report that I wanted to touch upon.
Okay.
It mentions that Dr. Kiran Divi is related to both the managing director, Dr. Murali K. Divi,
Yes,
and the whole-time director commercial, Ms. Neelima Prasad Divi.
that's right. There are family ties at the top.
So there's a family connection within the leadership structure.
Yeah, it's intriguing, isn't it?
It definitely adds another layer to the story.
It makes you wonder about the dynamics at play and how those family ties might influence their decision-making.
I mean, family businesses can be very successful,
Oh, absolutely.
but they can also come with their own unique challenges.
Definitely, it's a double-edged sword.
So it'll be interesting to see how those dynamics play out as we delve deeper into Divi's operations.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
Okay, so we've talked about their financials, their leadership.
Right.
What else is on the agenda for this deep dive?
Well, there's some exciting news about their expansion plans, specifically a project called Kakinada.
Kakinada. Okay, that's piqued my interest. What is that all about?
This is where things get really interesting. They've announced that they've partially started commercial operations at a brand new facility.
A new facility, okay.
Their Unit 3, located in Antimamadi village near Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh.
So they're expanding their production capacity.
Exactly. They're scaling up to meet the growing demand for their products.
And this is what's called a greenfield project, right?
Yes, you're right. It means they're building it from scratch on undeveloped land.
So it's a major undertaking.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge investment and a sign of their confidence in the future.
Now, I remember seeing some figures in the report about their capital expenditures.
Yes.
Can you remind us what those were?
So they've spent 433 crores, or about 54 million US dollars on capital expenditures just this past quarter.
Wow, 54 million.
And for the 9-month period, the total is 557 crores, or roughly $69 million.
Okay, and a large chunk of that is going towards the Kakinada project, I assume.
Yes, 118 crores, or about $52 million, is specifically earmarked for that project.
So they're not holding back on this expansion.
Nope, they're going all in.
And when can we expect this new facility to be fully operational?
The report indicates that the remaining sections are expected to be up and running in about 6 months.
So by mid-2025,
Yeah, approximately.
this new facility will be contributing fully to their operations.
Exactly. It's going to be a major boost to their production capacity.
This is all very exciting, but I have to admit, I'm still a bit fuzzy on what exactly they're producing at these facilities.
Okay.
We've been talking about APIs, but can you give us a more concrete understanding of what those are?
Sure. So imagine you're baking a cake.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You've got your flour, your sugar, eggs, all those ingredients.
Gotcha.
APIs are like the key ingredients in pharmaceuticals.
Great.
They're the active components that make a medicine effective.
Okay.
Just like you can't have a cake without flour, you can't have medication without APIs.
Okay, that makes sense. So Divi's is essentially creating the essential building blocks for all sorts of medications.
Precisely. And their expansion into new facilities like Kakinada suggests they're anticipating even greater demand for those ingredients in the years to come.
So they're getting ready to bake a lot more pharmaceutical cakes.
Exactly. A great analogy.
Okay, I think that helps me understand their business a lot better.
Good.
Now, as we continue this deep dive, what else should we be paying attention to?
Well, we've talked about their consolidated performance,
Right.
but it's also important to look at their standalone results, which focus on their operations specifically in India.
Okay, so that'll give us a more granular view of their home market.
Exactly. And we can compare those figures to their global performance to see how those two pieces fit together.
Sounds good. Let's dive into those standalone numbers then.
All right, let's do it. So if we look at Q3 of fiscal year 2025, their standalone revenue from operations was 2,297 crores.
2,297 crores. And just to remind our listeners,
That's about 290 million US dollars.
okay, so that's solely from their operations within India.
Correct, just their India business.
That's still a pretty impressive number.
It is. It shows the strength of their domestic market.
Now, how does that compare to their standalone revenue during the same period last year?
It's up significantly from the 1,808 crores, or roughly $225 million that they generated in Q3 of the previous year.
Okay, so we're seeing that consistent growth pattern again.
Yeah, they're definitely on an upward trajectory.
And what about the profitability in India specifically?
Well, for this past quarter, their standalone profit after tax was 594 crores.
594 crores. Okay, and in U.S. dollars, that's...
Almost 75 million US dollars.
Wow, that's a pretty big jump from...
Yeah, it's nearly double the 358 crores, or about $45 million they reported for the same quarter last year.
Okay, so they're not just growing their revenue, they're also becoming more efficient.
Absolutely. Their profitability is increasing, which is a good sign for investors.
Now let's zoom out a bit and look at their standalone performance for the 9 months leading up to December 31st, 2024.
Okay, so for that 9-month period, their revenue from operations was 6,662 crores.
6,662 crores, and that's over...
Over 800 million US dollars.
Wow, that's a significant portion of their total revenue.
Their India business is a substantial part of their overall operations.
And how does that compare to the same period in 2023?
They earned 5,406 crores, or about $675 million during the same period last year.
Okay, so whether we're looking at the quarterly or the 9-month figures,
Right.
it's clear that Divi's India business is performing very well.
Absolutely. It's a solid foundation for their growth.
Now, revenue is only part of the story.
Of course.
What about their standalone profit after tax for those 9 months?
That came in at an impressive 1,542 crores.
Which translates to...
About 193 million US dollars.
Okay, and just to provide some context, How does that compare to the previous year?
It's a significant increase from the 1,045 crores, roughly 130 million US dollars they reported in the previous year for that same time frame.
So they're consistently growing their revenue and their profitability in India.
Yes, they got a good thing going.
It's interesting to look at these standalone figures because it really isolates their performance in their home market.
It does. It shows that they're not just relying on global expansion for their
They've
success.
got a strong base in India.
Exactly. And that provides a solid platform for them to expand internationally.
Speaking of global expansion,
Yeah,
let's circle back to that Kakinada project.
sure.
We talk about their investments in the new facility,
Right.
but I'm curious to understand the strategic thinking behind it.
Well, it's all about anticipating future growth.
Okay,
They're making a bet that the demand for APIs and other pharmaceutical ingredients will continue to rise in the coming years.
so they're getting ahead of the curve.
Exactly. They're positioning themselves to be a key supplier as the market expands.
And this new facility is a big part of that strategy.
It is. It's a significant investment in their future growth.
Now, building a brand new facility from scratch, that's a pretty bold move.
It is. It takes a lot of planning and resources.
It also comes with risks, right?
Of course, there are always risks associated with large-scale expansions like this.
Like what?
Well, there could be unexpected delays, construction costs could escalate, there's always the risk of regulatory hurdles,
Right.
and even shifts in global demand could impact the project's success.
So it's not a guaranteed win.
No, but it's a calculated risk that Divis seems willing to take.
It sounds like they've weighed the potential rewards against the risks.
Exactly, and they've decided that the potential upside is worth the investment.
It's a bit like a game of chess,
I like that analogy.
where you have to think several moves ahead.
You have to anticipate your opponent's moves and plan accordingly.
Exactly. And in this case, the opponent is the global pharmaceutical market.
Right, and that market is constantly evolving.
So it's not just about making the right moves today, it's about positioning yourself for success in the long term.
Absolutely, and that's what Divi seems to be doing with this Kakinada project.
Okay, so they're making strategic investments to drive future growth.
Yes.
Now, there was one other item in the report that got my attention.
Okay.
They mentioned something about their taxation strategy.
Yeah, yes, that's an interesting one.
Can you shed some light on that for us?
Sure, so Divis has decided to exercise an option under Section 115 BAA of the Income Tax Act 1961 starting this financial year.
Okay, I have to admit tax laws are not my forte.
Yeah, they can be a bit complicated.
Can you break that down for us in simpler terms?
Basically, this section allows companies to choose a lower corporate tax rate.
Lower tax rate, that sounds good.
It is, but there's a trade-off.
Okay.
They have to give up certain deductions and exemptions that they could have claimed otherwise.
So it's a balancing act.
Exactly. They're weighing the benefits of the lower tax rate against the potential loss of those deductions.
And they've decided that the lower tax rate is the better option for them.
Yes, at least for now.
It's interesting how all these financial decisions are interconnected.
Everything is tied together.
It's like a giant puzzle where each piece affects the others.
Exactly. And that's what makes analyzing these financial reports so fascinating.
We're not just looking at numbers in isolation. We're trying to understand the bigger picture.
Right. We're trying to see the strategy behind the numbers.
So as we continue this deep dive, what else should we be thinking about?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, but I think it's important to step back and consider what all of this means for Divi's future.
Okay, so let's shift our focus from the past and present to the future then.
Sounds good. Let's explore what lies ahead for Divis Laboratories. Well, it's really remarkable how Divis consistently manages to, stay on this upward trajectory.
Yeah, they're not afraid to make big moves, are they?
No, not at all. They're making bold investments like we saw with the Kakinada project. And they're not shying away from making strategic decisions, like opting for that new tax strategy.
Right, it's like they're walking this tightrope
Yeah,
between, ambition and prudence.
absolutely.
It's a delicate balance,
It is.
but they seem to be managing it very well.
Yeah, they're not just chasing short-term gains. They're really thinking about the long game.
And that long-term vision, it's reflected in everything they do.
I agree.
From those big investments in infrastructure to how they focus on building these strong partnerships within the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, they're not just reacting to market trends. They're actively shaping the future of their industry.
I think that's a really important point. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers,
Oh, for sure.
but ultimately it's the strategy and the people behind those numbers that really make a difference.
Yeah, the numbers are just a reflection of their vision and their execution.
Exactly. And speaking of people, we can't forget that interesting family dynamic within the leadership team.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely something to watch.
I mean, it'll be fascinating to see how those relationships might influence the company's direction going forward.
Absolutely, it adds a whole other layer of intrigue to their story.
Yeah, it's like a family business, but on a global scale.
That's a great way to put it.
So what's the big takeaway here?
I think whether you're an investor, a scientist, or even just someone who relies on medications,
Right.
Divis Laboratories is a company worth paying attention to.
They're playing a vital role in the global pharmaceutical ecosystem.
Absolutely. And their decisions, they have these ripple effects that extend far beyond just their financial statements.
And it all comes back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Divi's might not be a household name,
Right?
but their work touches the lives of millions of people around the world.
Yeah, they're kind of like the unsung heroes of the pharmaceutical industry.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the most impactful players are the ones working quietly behind the scenes.
Absolutely. They're the ones making sure that those essential medications are available to the people who need them.
Like the stagehands in a grand play.
Yeah, a perfect analogy.
They're making sure the show goes on seamlessly without ever taking a bow.
Exactly. Their contribution is essential, but often overlooked.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of shining a light on their work today.
I think so too.
We've explored their financial strengths, their ambitious plans, and their strategic vision for the future.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
And I think most importantly, we've gained a deeper appreciation for the often invisible role that they play in the global healthcare landscape.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating deep dive.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've seen how Divis Laboratories operates behind the scenes to make a real difference in the world.
Yes.
So I challenge you to look around your own lives and try to identify those unsung heroes.
Interesting.
The companies or even the individuals who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to make things happen.
I like that.
Think about the connections that make our modern world possible. And the next time you encounter a product or service, take a moment to appreciate the journey it took to reach you
Okay.
and all those people who played a role in its creation.
That's a great takeaway.
That's all for today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.